Have you ever driven past an old house and felt as if someone inside was watching you, even though every window was dark? What if I told you that one forgotten house in America became so feared that local police refused to enter it alone after sunset? The strangest part wasn't the whispers, the moving shadows, or the unexplained sounds. It was the fact that everyone who spent a single night inside described the exact same impossible room, a room that officially never existed. Some believed it was a psychological illusion. Others insisted the house was cursed. But years later, investigators uncovered forgotten documents that suggested something far more disturbing. Because sometimes the scariest places aren't haunted by ghosts. Sometimes they're haunted by the memories people tried to erase. In the autumn of 2018, documentary photographer Ethan Carter accepted what seemed like another ordinary assignment. He specialized in photographing abandoned American landmarks before they disappeared forever. Old hospitals, deserted schools, forgotten factories. He had explored dozens of locations that most people avoided without a second thought. Nothing had ever truly frightened him. His followers admired his calm attitude. They joked that Ethan could sleep inside an abandoned prison without losing a minute of rest. When a local historian from rural Vermont emailed him about an isolated Victorian mansion known simply as Blackridge House, Ethan barely hesitated. According to the historian, the house had remained empty for nearly 60 years. Every family that attempted to renovate it eventually abandoned the project. Workers quit unexpectedly. Security guards resigned after a single shift. Several owners simply locked the doors again and disappeared from public records. Most people dismissed the stories as small-town legends designed to scare teenagers. That only made Ethan more interested. The house stood alone at the end of an overgrown gravel road, nearly 3 miles from the nearest highway. Tall pine trees surrounded the property from every direction, blocking sunlight even during the afternoon. Satellite images showed nothing unusual. Old county maps listed it as a private residence until the early 1960s. After that, the property seemed to vanish from official attention. Even tax records became strangely incomplete. When Ethan arrived, the first thing he noticed wasn't the size of the mansion. It was the silence. No birds, no insects, no distant traffic, only the wind moving through dead branches. His camera microphone captured something even stranger. Every few minutes, a faint knocking echoed somewhere inside the house. 3 slow knocks, always 3. He assumed loose wooden beams were shifting with temperature changes. Still, the rhythm felt unnaturally consistent. As he approached the front porch, he noticed dozens of old scratch marks carved across the entrance door. Not random scratches, perfectly parallel lines, almost as if someone had desperately tried to claw their way out. Inside, the mansion remained surprisingly intact. Dust covered every surface, yet expensive furniture still occupied the rooms. Silver portraits hung neatly on faded wallpaper. Silverware remained arranged on the dining table exactly as if dinner had been interrupted decades earlier. Nothing looked looted. Nothing looked abandoned in the usual sense. It looked paused, as if time itself had stopped. While setting up his camera equipment, Ethan discovered something that immediately caught his attention. Every clock inside the house had stopped at exactly 2:17. The grandfather clock, kitchen clock, bedroom alarm clock, even an old pocket watch resting inside a desk drawer. all frozen at the same minute. Coincidences happen, but not like this. His rational mind searched for explanations. Perhaps someone had intentionally stopped them years ago. Maybe it had become part of local folklore. He kept filming. The footage would make excellent material for his documentary. On the second floor, Ethan found children's bedrooms untouched since the late 1950s. Wooden toys rested neatly beside the beds. School books remained open on tiny desks. One coloring book displayed an unfinished drawing. Instead of coloring outside the lines like most children, someone had carefully shaded every window in solid black. Every single window. Even stranger, the child's drawing included an extra staircase inside the house. He compared it to the mansion's original floor plan he had downloaded before arriving. No such staircase existed. He laughed quietly. Children imagined things all the time. But then something unexpected happened. His laser measuring device briefly displayed a hallway length nearly 12 feet longer than it physically should have been. He checked again. Normal. He blamed faulty batteries. Late afternoon sunlight slowly disappeared behind thick clouds. The interior became darker much faster than expected. He decided to spend the night, not because he believed the ghost stories, because nighttime footage always attracted more viewers. He placed infrared cameras throughout the mansion, motion sensors, digital audio recorders, everything professional investigators normally used. If anything unusual happened, his equipment would capture it. At exactly 8:43 p.m., the knocking returned. 3 slow knocks, this time coming from directly beneath the floor where he stood. He stopped moving. The sound stopped too. Then another 3 knocks echoed from somewhere upstairs. Impossible. He hadn't heard footsteps, no doors opening, nothing. Only those 3 deliberate knocks moving through the house as if following him. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and climbed toward the attic. Halfway up the staircase, every electronic device in his backpack shut off simultaneously. Camera, audio recorder, flashlight, phone, power bank, everything. 5 seconds later, they all restarted by themselves. Every timestamp now displayed exactly 2:17, even though his watch clearly read 8:59 p.m. He felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not panic, not fear, uncertainty. Because cameras malfunction, phones freeze, batteries fail, but every independent electronic device failing together, then restarting with the exact same impossible time, had no simple explanation. He continued climbing. The attic door stood slightly open. Cold air drifted downward, much colder than the October night outside. When he pushed the door fully open, his flashlight revealed something impossible. Fresh footprints in decades of untouched dust, leading toward a wall and stopping there, as if whoever made them had simply walked through solid wood.
The silence that followed felt heavier than the discovery itself. Ethan lowered himself slowly, aiming his flashlight at the footprints from every possible angle. The prints were clear enough to show individual tread patterns, yet there was no return trail. Whoever had walked across the attic floor had reached the wall and simply ceased to exist. He pressed his palm against the old wooden boards. Solid. No hidden door, no loose panel, no draft leaking through cracks. Just weathered timber that had not been disturbed for decades. His camera continued recording as he documented every inch of the wall, convinced there had to be a logical explanation. Then he noticed something odd. The camera's tiny digital screen displayed more than the room in front of him. For less than a second, another doorway appeared on the display. Not in reality, only on the screen. It vanished before he could react. He replayed the recording immediately. The doorway wasn't there. Frame after frame showed only the empty wall. Ethan frowned. Electronic glitches were common in abandoned buildings. Still, this felt different. He decided to inspect the attic more carefully before calling it a night. Hidden beneath broken furniture and old trunks sat a cedar chest covered with layers of dust. Unlike everything else in the attic, the lock had recently been scratched. Someone had tried to force it open. Using a screwdriver from his equipment bag, Ethan carefully pried the lid loose. Inside were dozens of family photographs wrapped in yellowed newspapers. The first few appeared perfectly ordinary. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, children playing in the backyard. A smiling family living an ordinary American life sometime during the 1950s. Then, the photographs became increasingly disturbing. In one picture, every family member smiled toward the camera, except the youngest daughter. She stared toward the upstairs window. Her expression wasn't frightened, it was warning someone. Another photograph showed the family standing in front of Blackridge House after snowfall. Again, everyone faced the photographer, except the little girl. She looked toward an upstairs window that appeared completely black despite bright afternoon sunlight. As Ethan flipped through the collection, his heartbeat slowed. Not because he felt calmer, because his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. In every photograph, the little girl's position changed. Sometimes she stood beside her parents, sometimes behind them, sometimes across the yard, but her eyes always focused on the exact same upstairs window, every single time. The final photograph made Ethan's stomach tighten. It showed the empty front porch, no people, no furniture, nothing. Yet reflected in the glass beside the front door stood 6 figures, the family, including the little girl, even though nobody was outside when the photograph was taken. He carefully placed the pictures back into the chest. Outside, rain began striking the roof, heavy, cold, unrelenting. The sound should have felt comforting. Instead, it amplified every creak inside the mansion. By midnight, Ethan reviewed footage from the infrared cameras downstairs. Nothing unusual appeared. Empty hallways, silent rooms, occasional dust particles floating through the air. Then, camera 3 froze. The timestamp read exactly 2:17. A dark hallway filled the screen. Nothing moved for nearly 30 seconds. Suddenly, a child stepped into view, only from the shoulders down. Bare feet, white nightgown, small hands hanging at her sides. The figure remained perfectly still, not looking toward the camera, not moving, simply standing. The recording ended. Ethan immediately checked the actual hallway where camera 3 had been placed. Nothing. The hallway was empty. He replayed the footage again. This time, the child wasn't there, only the empty hallway. The file length remained exactly identical. No edits, no corruption. It was as though the image had erased itself. He wasn't ready to admit fear, but he could no longer deny something was profoundly wrong. At 1:12 a.m., he heard footsteps, soft, slow, measured. Not random settling noises, actual footsteps crossing the floor directly below him. He called out loudly, "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. The footsteps continued. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. Grabbing a flashlight and a camera, he descended toward the first floor. Every room remained exactly as he had left it. No broken windows, no forced entry, no footprints, nothing. As he returned toward the staircase, something caught his eye. The dining room chairs had moved. He had filmed them earlier that evening. All 8 chairs had been tucked neatly under the table. Now, one chair stood pulled back, facing the hallway, as if someone had been sitting there moments earlier. Ethan checked his earlier footage. The chair had definitely been pushed in. He photographed the change, documented the floor, measured distances. His scientific instincts still dominated his thinking. There had to be an explanation. While examining the chair, he noticed faint writing carved underneath the tabletop. Not initials, not dates, a sentence. "If you hear knocking, don't answer." The words looked decades old, carved carefully using a small knife. Before Ethan could inspect further, 3 knocks echoed from somewhere inside the walls. Not outside, inside. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Without thinking, Ethan whispered, "Who's there?" The house became completely silent. Even the rain stopped. For nearly 15 seconds, the entire mansion seemed frozen. Then, every door on the first floor slammed at exactly the same moment. The explosion of sound shook dust from the ceiling. Pictures crashed from walls. Glass shattered somewhere upstairs. Ethan spun around, heart pounding. His flashlight flickered violently before stabilizing again. One door remained open. Only one. The basement door. He was certain it had been locked earlier. Now it stood wide open. Cold air drifted upward, carrying a strange smell. Not mold, not decay, old perfume. The kind that had disappeared from stores generations ago. Against every instinct telling him to leave, Ethan slowly approached. His flashlight revealed narrow wooden stairs descending into complete darkness. Each step groaned beneath his weight. The basement ceiling hung unusually low. Stone walls dripped with moisture. Old shelves lined one side of the room. Rusted tools covered the other. Nothing remarkable until he reached the far corner. There, hidden behind stacks of broken furniture, stood a child's wooden door, barely 4 feet tall, painted white. Unlike everything else in the basement, it looked almost untouched by time. No dust, no cobwebs, no peeling paint. Above the frame, carved carefully into the wood, were 5 words. The room was never built. Ethan stared in confusion. Those words made no sense. How could a room have a door if it had never existed? His flashlight suddenly dimmed again. Then, from the other side of the little door, came the unmistakable sound of a young girl quietly humming a lullaby. Not loudly, not menacingly, just softly enough to be heard. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, and somehow Ethan realized he already knew it. He just couldn't remember where he had heard it before. His hand slowly reached for the doorknob. The humming stopped instantly. The silence returned. Then a little girl's voice whispered from the other side, "So, you finally came back." The little girl's voice was barely louder than a whisper, yet every word echoed through the basement as though the walls themselves were repeating it. "So, you finally came back." Ethan's hand froze on the doorknob. His pulse thundered in his ears. For several seconds he couldn't breathe. Then he forced himself to answer. "I think you have the wrong person." Silence. The voice returned. "No, you just don't remember." The sentence sent a chill through his body, not because it sounded threatening, because it sounded disappointed, almost lonely. Ethan stepped back. Every instinct screamed at him to leave the basement immediately. Instead, his curiosity won. He slowly turned the doorknob. The tiny door opened without the slightest sound. Behind it, there wasn't a room. There was another hallway. Impossible. According to the mansion's floor plan, solid earth should have existed behind that wall. Instead, a narrow corridor stretched into darkness, illuminated by a faint yellow glow that seemed to come from nowhere. The hallway appeared strangely clean. No dust, no cobwebs, no signs of age. The wallpaper appeared brand new, despite the rest of the mansion falling apart. Ethan checked his laser measuring tool again. The hallway extended at least 30 feet beyond the exterior foundation of the house. That couldn't happen. The building simply wasn't large enough. He stepped inside. The air temperature changed immediately. Warmer, comfortable, almost inviting. The basement behind him suddenly felt unimaginably far away. His flashlight wasn't needed anymore. Soft golden light filled the corridor, despite there being no lamps. Halfway down the hall hung dozens of framed family portraits. The same family from the attic photographs. Only these pictures were different. In every portrait, someone had been scratched out. Not torn away, carefully removed with a sharp object. At first, Ethan assumed it was the father. Then another frame revealed it was the mother. The next showed one of the sons missing. Every photograph erased someone different, except one. The little girl was never scratched out. She remained in every picture, always smiling, always looking directly toward whoever stood in front of the frame. Ethan continued walking until he reached another door. Unlike the small white door behind him, this one was tall and elegant, painted deep black. Attached to the handle hung a brass tag, Room 217. He stared. His mind immediately connected the number. Every clock in the house, every electronic device, every mysterious malfunction, 217. His hands trembled. Coincidence no longer seemed possible. He carefully opened the black door. Inside sat an ordinary bedroom, or at least it appeared ordinary at first glance. Sunlight poured through lace curtains. Fresh flowers rested on a bedside table. A fireplace burned gently, despite there being no smell of smoke. Everything looked perfectly lived in, perfectly clean, perfectly normal. Except the room clearly belonged to another era. A radio quietly played music from the late 1950s. Children's books lay neatly stacked beside the bed. Women's dresses hung inside an open wardrobe. None showed any signs of age. It was as if time had stopped 60 years earlier. Then Ethan noticed movement. Someone sat beside the window. A little girl, perhaps 9 years old, long dark hair, white dress, bare feet. She faced the window with her back toward him. Without turning around, she spoke. "You weren't supposed to answer." Ethan swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "The knocking. You answered." "I only said, 'Who's there?'" The little girl nodded slowly. "Everyone does. And then the house remembers them." The words settled into the room with terrifying calm. Ethan forced himself to remain rational. "This isn't real." She smiled faintly. "Neither is this room." She finally turned to him. Her face looked perfectly ordinary.
Not ghostly, not monstrous, just an innocent child, except for one detail. Her eyes reflected no light whatsoever. They weren't black, they simply reflected nothing, like looking into deep water at midnight. "You should leave," she said softly. "Can you come with me?" The girl's smile disappeared. "I already left." Ethan frowned. "I don't understand." "No one understands until they read the journal." "What journal?" She slowly pointed beneath the bed. "There." Ethan cautiously knelt. Hidden beneath the wooden frame lay a leather notebook wrapped in faded cloth. Dust covered everything else, not the journal. Its cover remained surprisingly smooth. Embossed in faded gold letters were the initials E.C. His own initials, Ethan Carter. His breathing stopped. That wasn't possible. He opened the first page. The handwriting looked strangely familiar. January 14th, 1962. "If anyone finds this, do not trust the rooms. The house changes memories before it changes walls." He flipped faster. Every page described events identical to what he had experienced. The stopped clocks, the knocking, the hallway, the hidden room, even camera 3, word for word, as if someone had documented his exact investigation 60 years before he was born. His hands shook violently. The final completed page read, "If you're reading this and your name is Ethan Carter, I'm sorry. It means I escaped." The notebook slipped from his hands. His vision blurred. The room suddenly felt smaller. The little girl stood silently beside the window, watching him, almost sympathetically. He looked back toward the hallway. The door through which he had entered was gone. Only a blank wall remained. "No," he whispered. The girl lowered her eyes. "It always disappears after the journal is opened." "You knew this would happen?" "I hoped you wouldn't answer the knocking." Ethan ran toward the wall, solid, cold, no doorway, no hidden passage, nothing. His breathing became frantic. He struck the wall repeatedly. It didn't move. Behind him, the old radio suddenly crackled. The cheerful music stopped. A man's voice emerged through heavy static. "If anyone can hear this, leave Blackridge House before sunrise. Do not trust anyone inside, especially..." Static swallowed the sentence. Then another voice interrupted. It sounded exactly like Ethan, older, exhausted, and filled with hopelessness. "If you're hearing my voice, it's already too late. Don't make the mistake I made. When she asks you to remember, don't." The radio fell silent. The little girl slowly looked toward Ethan. Her expression was no longer sad. It was frightened for the first time. "They're awake," she whispered. Before Ethan could ask who she meant, heavy footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the invisible walls. Not one person, several, slow, perfectly synchronized, coming closer. Each step made the bedroom floor vibrate. The girl backed toward the corner. "They found you." The footsteps stopped directly outside the room. Then 3 slow knocks echoed against the invisible door that no longer existed. Knock, knock, knock. A calm voice spoke from the other side. "Ethan, we've been waiting for you for 64 years."